9.5 minutes after 8. Good morning to you. Welcome to the Forum at 8 here on SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader. Right, and I'm looking at my SMS line here. Lots of SMSs about the Amplatz issue, but we'll look at that some other time. Let me just tell you now, SMSs in relation to what we're going to be talking about. Mano in Pretoria says, I'm interested to see if the ANC and its alliance partners will stand up and stop the Eskom hike like they did with the Spear exhibition. That's Mano in Pretoria. And the reason why Mano is saying this is because yesterday was the first day of the public hearings by energy regulator NERSA on Eskom's proposed electricity price increases. And Eskom, of course, has applied to raise electricity prices by 16% year on year over the next 5 years. The power utility estimates that it will need 1.1 trillion rand for its infrastructure maintenance, staff costs and growth, and that South African public will have to foot the bill. Eskom's proposal has not gone unchallenged, though, with a number of organizations raising sharp objections. Let's hear what these objections are about then, and of course how Eskom justifies the application. On the line for me this morning, Tulufelo Molefe, who is the Group Executive for Customer Services at Eskom. Very good morning to you, Tulufelo. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Kolani. Good morning to listeners.
Thanks indeed for your time. Also joining me this morning, Viola Manuel, Executive Director at the Cape Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Viola, good morning.
Good morning, Kolani.
Hi. And Ivan Jim, National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa's General Secretary. Ivan, good morning.
Good morning, Colin. Good morning to listeners.
Thank you very much. Let me start with Tulufelo. As Eskom, you made a presentation and you will be making another one in Port Elizabeth this morning. How do you justify this application?
Yeah, thank you for that, Kolani. We as Eskom, this is obviously our third price application, MYPD3. We need to make sure that we recover the cost of producing electricity, which really includes our operating cost, the cost of operating and maintaining our assets and the network, as well as the full cost of financing the capacity program that we are currently busy with. So we really need to make sure that we actually get to cost-reflective tariff and making sure that we recover the cost of producing electricity.
But let's look at the detail. When it's all implemented, if you were to be granted the 16% increase, how much will the price of electricity be? Just breaking it down as an individual, how much will I be paying?
Yeah, what the current price of electricity is on average is at 61 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
We are applying for 67 cents per kilowatt hour over the 5 years. And I need to just clarify as well that Eskom's own needs is 13%. So Eskom is applying for 13% for the needs that I've just related now. And the 3% is to really support the independent power producers as determined by the Minister of Energy, the 3,725 megawatt park.
All right, so over the next couple of years, it'll move from 61 cents per kilowatt hour to 67 cents.
Yes, that is correct, Kolali.
But it comes on the back of other increases as well.
Yes, we understand that. We are aware of the impact that this would have to the economy, but I think we really need to understand that we must balance. We are aware of the impact, as I said, from an Eskom perspective. But what is important is that we also need to make sure that we strike the balance between ensuring a stable electricity supply for the country. And therefore that means that the Eskom and the industry must be financially viable and sustainable to be able to do that. But also we recognize the impact on the economy. And yes, this is a challenge that the country has and NERSA to in making that decision. That there must be that balance that has to be struck.
Let's talk to Viola first. From the Cape Chamber of Commerce and Industry, clearly the issue is damned if you do, damned if you don't, because the industry wants the lights on, but at the same time the industry is complaining about the increases.
I think, Kalani, one of the things we've got to state categorically is that this increase is going to have a devastating effect on the economy. Lots of our businesses are going to close down. Our small businesses are going to close down. This input cost is going to escalate radically for them. I mean, one of the biggest steel producers also did a presentation yesterday where they were actually pointing out the dramatic effect it's going to have on a huge international organization like themselves. And I mean, they're one of the biggest steel producers. One of the things that the Cape Chamber has been calling for is that we're starting to ask Eskom to start becoming a lot more innovative and a lot more forward-thinking in terms of our power security. So we're not looking for more of the same, which is very much what they presented in this third period. They've really been saying, we're going to stick with coal. That's why we've got to have these huge tariff increases, capacity. We're trying to build capacity. And what the Chamber is trying to put forward is let's start thinking a lot more innovatively, and let's start looking at the game changers like natural gas. We've got huge gas finds off the coast of Africa. We can start increasing trade with African countries. We're talking about the fact that there are existing pipelines, and it's one of those things where we're really going to have to look at it, the advantages of gas over coal.
But Viola, with due respect, again, Eskom may very well say you're backing up the wrong tree because it's not their decision to make about whether we explore natural gases, we go to the Karoo and look for, and we frack and those kind of things.
Agreed. However, Eskom is a huge stakeholder in that game. So Eskom is well positioned, as well as NERSA, but we're all well positioned. If we make an agreement that that's the way to go, if everyone puts their heads together, the influence that these entities will have in pushing that decision is not something that we must take lightly.
But is there, and in your understanding, of course, of the presentation made yesterday, Viola, is there a business case for this increase? In other words, is it necessary?
Of course it's necessary. I mean, one of the things we're concerned about is the fact that it's very clear that there's huge problems just in terms of our climate, there's huge problems in terms of the coal reserves, the fact that coal, the cost of coal in terms of wages and transportation is going to continue to rise. Those are the concerns that we're saying makes coal unsustainable, and also these tariff increases just to build capacity and keeping the skilled people around to actually run these power stations is not sustainable.
All right, let me bring in the unions then, Ivan. And one of the companies that presented, as we've heard from Viola, is a steel producer, and that affects your members.
Yes, obviously, Kolana, I think if you're listening to both reflection, the bottom line here is that Eskom 110% increase, and we know for a fact that once they get granted their application as it is, I'm not sure about this because our own calculation is that we will move from 61 cent kilowatt to 128 over the period of which is being requested. Secondly, I mean, municipalities down in June, which has been a routine, they then also add their own exorbitant increases because they must still continue to supply. And this increase is going to have devastating negative impact both to industry and to our own communities. Already, with the 50 kilowatt which Eskom is giving for free to communities, which in our view must be increased to 100, and which basically our own communities who are basically suffering are not even using it for cooking; they're just using for light. Now, for us, from where we stand, we have already lost about 7 foundries. This is not a joke; they are closed. And having gone through, having called employers, having assessed the impact and the state, I mean, I'm talking about companies that have been making submissions to DTI to say, look, we need to be helped on the electricity tariff. We have now workshopped. We've invited Eskom. We've workshopped their application. We've workshopped the experiences of those companies, the actual negative impact of tariff.
Yeah.
But you must also remember that this used to be our competitive advantage. When Eskom sold its coal rights, that's how, as a country, we were plunged to this particular process. And we're in this crisis because Eskom shifted from its primary mandate, which was to electrify the country, secondly, to ensure that we got a competitive electricity tariff so that both communities and the economy can be able to generate jobs.
Okay.
And as from where we stand, we stand opposed that Eskom must be given this exorbitant hikes, and for obvious reasons. I mean, there is no example in the world it's almost like saying if health is a challenge in your country, then you must increase tariff of Eskom. There is e-toll for roads now. There's e-toll there's e-toll for energy. We think this does not work. We think we can be able to nationalize coal. Coal can be nationalized. I mean, countries like Italy, like New Zealand have done that. They have got dedicated mines who basically make sure that they are dedicated for resourcing energy for their country.
Okay,
Why don't we allow the mining oligarchy in the coal sector to make exorbitant increase and basically compromise a national asset like Eskom?
Your suggestion is that Eskom must have its own coal mines that will supply it so that it can then generate electricity.
I'm saying we can. This is the time when, in fact, maybe I should submit that there are alternatives which we can embark upon. Our concrete suggestion is that Eskom must be given an increase which is not double digit, which must be, we must look where inflation is, and we must, instead of giving them 5 years, give them 3 years, and in that 3-year period, let's nationalize coal. Let's put on the table other mechanisms that could be used, like, for instance, taxing the rich more, and like, thirdly, making sure that we tax capital flight and financial speculation in transactions that are being done. Bring back capital controls. Don't allow money to leave to leave the country.
All right, Viola. According to Ivan, then your members must be taxed a little bit more. I suppose as members of the commerce and industry, they must contribute a bit more in terms of electrifying this country.
I think one of the biggest concerns we have is that as soon as the mismanagement and poor planning of Eskom actually, comes to a head, then usually what happens is the mines and industry, which are the economic backbone of our country, are the ones that actually feel the rationing of supplies, the cutting of supplies. And now there's a call for, our members, organized business, again to foot the bill.
Okay.
And organized business is saying, you know what, we're the backbone of this economy. We're the ones that are creating jobs and creating the opportunities for work in this country, and yet again, we're not only bearing the brunt of poor management on Eskom's side, we're now also having to foot the bill. And if that's the case, then what we need to make sure of is that the voice of organized business is heard to say, we need to find alternatives. This is actually not the right way for us to go. Let's start looking at alternatives a lot more clearly. And another point that organized business made is that the Integrated Resources Plan of 2010 has to be reviewed. It has to be reviewed. In that plan, there is no mention of the importance of gas or the kind of trade spin-offs we would have if we were to actually go into some kind of trade agreements with the countries on our borders that have these huge supplies of gas. So the economics of power and power security have changed because the price of gas has come down. And so what we're saying is, let's start looking at that Integrated Resources Plan of 2010, of which electricity supply is a huge part of it.
All right, Viola.
Let's review that.
Tulefela, we're going to come to you in a minute because there are so many questions for you to answer, especially this question about whether we're going to move from 61 cents per kilowatt hour to 67, or is it 128? And I've got a couple of SMSs that relate to that, and I'll read them for you in a minute. But Gift in PE already at the venue of the hearings. Gift, how do you feel about this matter?
Hi, Xolani, and hi to your guest.
Yeah.
Look, first and foremost, Xolani, I'm quite shocked that Eskom could convene a public hearing here in P at Summerstrand Hotel, which to me is a leafy suburb, not accessible to poor and working class communities, and I view that as very unacceptable and very horrifying. Secondly, Xolani, to me, I think NASA must just respect Eskom's request that this multi-year price determination should have a duration of 5 years, which to me is going to run from 2013 to 2018 instead of the prevailing 3 years. And thirdly, I think it should not grant Eskom inflation matching increases for the next 3 years, which will be from 2013 to 2015. But lastly, Xolani, all these increases at the end of the day, they are going to affect our own black working class communities. First and foremost, companies in particular in the Nelson Mandela Bay have already threatened that they will be relocating to this part of the city, which if they relocate, it means there will be job losses. And who will be affected? Our own black communities.
Okay, Gift in Port Elizabeth. By the way, the lines are open. 0891 104 208. 0891 104 208. You could be a business owner out there and perhaps have a view on this issue. Please talk to us about it. But also, there could be experts out there that perhaps understand these issues a lot closer. Does Eskom deserve this kind of increase that they are asking for, the 16% tariff increase? 0891 104 208. Also, we'll take SMSs at 34701. I have a slight problem with my email, but I have an alternative email. Send us an email at chatv@sabc.co.za. That's Fabakshini's email address. chatv@sabc.co.za. Tulufele, let me come back to you with these questions about this increase. 61 cents to 67, or is it to 128 cents? Tulufele?
Mate, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you now.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah. No, I did indicate it is increasing by 67 cents per kilowatt hour. So it is increasing from 61 to 128.
From 61 cents to 128? Yeah,
over the 5-year period.
All right. No, that's going to be quite something because it more than doubles over the 5-year period.
That's correct.
And I'm getting, there's an SMS here that says, I don't know where the lady says electricity costs 61 cents per kilowatt hour. Durban municipality charges me R1.03.
Yeah. Kolani, do you want me to respond to some of the earlier comments and then we can, I think just to clarify that as well.
Okay.
This is an Eskom increase. It is not a municipal increase. So it relates to all Eskom's customers, our 5 million customers, including our municipality who supply to their own customers. So the increase will relate to a municipal customer bulk, the metros and all the municipalities that Eskom provides electricity to, and they will then have to apply in terms of the Municipal Finance Management Act for an increase that will then go to their own direct customers.
Because already in Kimberley, somebody says they're paying R1.48 a unit already.
Yes, and obviously that is a thing of the municipalities. We apply for our own increase, and then afterwards, as I've indicated, they would then also follow the process in terms of the MFMA. Yeah.
The costing is quite complex. But again, please address some of the questions raised. Let me start perhaps with the questions from Viola.
Okay, I think, yes, and we have seen the submission from the Cape Chamber of Commerce. I think what's important to state here is that we do agree. We're talking about the increase that we are applying for is to see us up to the build program of Kusile Power Station. Now, this is up to 2018, and we have actually given scenarios to indicate what the increase would be for future investment, and that would be in terms of the IRP 2010, which is actually not an Eskom determination. It's actually not an Eskom decision in terms of the mix of technologies that needs to be decided upon in the future. That is for the Department of Energy. We are aware of that. We support the gas strategy into the future. But this application that we are talking about is to really help us with the cost of producing electricity now, the cost of making sure that we can finance our current debt to be able to conclude our bill program.
So it's more about now as opposed to a long-term investment.
Yes, that is correct. And we have provided scenarios to show what the increase would be if we were looking at longer-term scenarios for future programs.
How much would you be asking then if you were to look for a future scenario?
If you look at the current IRP 2010, and bearing in mind that it has since been a change since our application was submitted, is that we would look at about 20% per annum over the MYPD period. But it's really for the decision makers to decide. It doesn't matter whether it's Eskom that is building or whether it's the independent power producers. You will still need to increase electricity. I think from our perspective, we've always said it is Eskom's needs and it is the industry's needs to make sure that they are financially viable to be able to supply a stable electricity for the country.
Ivan Jim was saying a little earlier on that he thinks, I suppose as a bit of an alternative, maybe you should get nothing like a double digit, get something less than 10.
Yeah, we need to understand what the implications are. As I said, we are looking for recovering the cost of producing electricity. We need to make sure that we currently have loan covenants that we need to be able to meet in terms of the financing, the funding that we've received for our current bill program.
Okay, so in other words, anything less than 10, you will default on your payments. Is that what it is?
Say again?
That anything less than 10, you will default on your payments?
We will definitely default on our payment. We have not secured 100% of our funding up to Kusile. We've only secured 80%. Now, we know that any investor would like to get confidence in any business that they are financially sustainable enough to be able to repay their debt. So we're saying that unless we can demonstrate to our investors that we are financially sustainable, we would not be able to conclude the bill program. And we need to think as a country about the implications of ensuring security of supply. Because as we know right now that the power system has been very tight, and they have said themselves, even at NUMSA yesterday, that Eskom is struggling to keep the lights on. Until we have completed the bill program, the system will still be very tight. And
is there no possibility of restructuring internally? One of the things that came through about salaries, for instance, that are being paid to staff.
Yes.
Is there no possibility of restructuring internally as opposed to charging people the 16% more?
Polani, we're doing that all the time. We have given we've given ourselves a challenge based on what we have been able to save in terms of our operational expenditure. In the past 2 years, we've been able to save up to 9 billion, 4.5 billion in the previous financial year. And based on that, we've committed that we will save up to 30 billion over the next 5 years in our operational expenditure.
Okay. All right.
So we have operational efficiency programs in place as we speak right now to make sure that we are efficient.
All right.
The challenge is because we are growing, we do need the skills. South Africa, as Eskom is competing for skills like any other business. So we therefore need to make sure that we have highly competent people to be able to run the business.
Fine. Let me do this. Let me take my updates. Ivan Jim is on the line with me. Viola Manuel also staying on the line with me. Lots of calls. Alec in Johannesburg, please stay for me. Sigru in Randburg. Sebastian in Cape Town. Tegelelo in Bedford View. Just please be patient. I'm going to start with the news headlines then from Vabakshni.